The music drifted softly through the bright afternoon sunlight of the community center ballroom, but no one noticed it as much as the man standing alone beneath the tall windows. Rivenhale looked like someone who had forgotten what joy felt like, his shoulders slightly bent forward from years of holding more weight than any one heart should carry. He didn't belong here among the laughing families and polished floors. His worn shoes and tired eyes made that painfully obvious. Yet what truly drew attention was the small girl standing behind him, clutching the back of his shirt as if she were afraid the world might steal him away. Everyone else danced, smiled, celebrated, and the single dad simply stood there, frozen between a past that haunted him and a future he wasn't sure he deserved. And that was the moment when a woman in a crisp white blazer and soft gold earrings, the woman everyone whispered about, walked straight toward him with a look that promised to shatter everything he thought he knew about himself. Lyra Ashford, the youngest CEO in the region, stopped in front of him, watched him as if she could see the battles inside him, and said the words that made every head turn: "Dance with me before you regret it." If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that heal something inside you, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. It truly helps keep these stories alive. The afternoon sun washed through the windows, casting golden streaks across the polished wood as Riven struggled to understand why this powerful, wealthy woman would choose him, someone who barely had enough money to keep the electricity on last week. He didn't move at first, and Lyra didn't push him. She only waited, her expression calm but determined, as if she already knew what storms had shaped him. Eventually he took her hand, and the moment their palms touched, memories he'd long buried rose like dust shaken from old shelves. Years earlier, Riven had lost his wife Mariel to an unexpected illness that emptied their savings, drained his hope, and left him raising their daughter, Avina, alone. The grief had settled over him like permanent fog, and though he kept moving, working construction shifts, cleaning at night, doing whatever it took, he had forgotten how to live. Joy felt like betrayal. Happiness felt like something stolen from the life he once had. And dancing, that felt like standing too close to who he used to be. Lyra sensed his hesitation, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she stepped into the sunlight and guided him gently across the floor. Something about her presence made his thoughts slow down, made the noise of the world fade just a little. She was calm, collected, graceful in a way that wasn't about perfection, but rather control she had fought to earn. She didn't need rescuing. She didn't beg for attention. She simply existed with a quiet strength that felt strangely familiar. But Riven didn't know what others whispered about her. He didn't know that Lyra's success came at the cost of a childhood where she was left behind by people who promised to stay, or that her mother had been a housekeeper who raised her alone while dreaming of better days. He didn't know that Lyra built her empire from sleepless nights and silent sacrifices. He only knew that she looked at him, not his worn clothes, not his calloused hands, not the pain he tried to hide, but him. And in a world that often saw him as invisible, her gaze felt like sunlight after a long winter. As they moved slowly across the floor, Avina watched them with wide eyes. She had never seen her father dance with anyone since her mother died. The child's small fingers rubbed the ribbon on her dress, twisting it nervously. She always worried about him far more than a child should. She felt his sadness even when he smiled for her. In her tiny heart, she wished more than anything for someone to help him breathe again. Someone to remind him that life didn't end when pain began. The music swelled softly, and the crowd faded into the background. Riven's steps were clumsy at first, but Lyra adjusted with him, guiding him without making him feel smaller. She seemed to understand that his fear wasn't of dancing, it was of letting go. And as the minutes drifted by, tiny fragments of hope began to stir in places he thought had gone numb forever. After the dance ended, Lyra didn't push him into conversation. She simply nodded and walked away with a soft smile, leaving him with something far more powerful than words, a sense of being seen. That night, as Riven tucked Avina into bed in their small daylight-filled apartment, he kept thinking of that moment. The memory returned every time he blinked, the warmth of her hand, the quiet confidence in her eyes. Yet he reminded himself that people like Lyra Ashford didn't enter the lives of people like him. She lived in skyscrapers and boardrooms. He lived paycheck to paycheck, barely keeping their tiny home running. She had a world of luxury. He had a world of survival. Days passed, but fate has a way of ignoring the lines people draw between themselves and others. One bright afternoon, as Riven arrived at a construction site, the supervisor informed him that a new owner had taken an interest in the building under development. And within minutes, sleek black SUVs pulled up, and out stepped Lara Ashford in a crisp black gray business suit, her hair tied in a neat ponytail that shimmered under the midday sun. The workers whispered among themselves, impressed by her presence, and Riven felt a strange rush of disbelief. Somehow the universe had placed them in each other's path again. Lyra's eyes swept across the group, but when they landed on Riven, something softened in her expression of familiarity, a recognition, a quiet understanding. She approached him with the same calm confidence she had shown during their dance. She asked him questions about safety, structure, and deadlines, but she also asked something no one else there did, how he was doing. The question startled him. People asked about work, not about the man behind it. Yet she seemed genuinely interested, listening with stillness that felt foreign to someone used to being dismissed. Over the next week, Lara visited the site several times, always during the brightest hour of the day, and Riven found himself looking forward to her presence more than he expected. She asked about Avina, and Riven noticed the way her eyes grew gentler whenever the child's name was mentioned. Lyra didn't have a family of her own. Success had come at the cost of nearly everything else, but she had always loved watching fathers who truly cared for their children. It reminded her of the home she once wished she had. One afternoon, as Riven's shift ended early and he headed to Avina's school to pick her up, he found Lyra already there, talking to the principal about funding for a new arts program she wanted to donate. The sun illuminated her blazer in soft golden hues, and Avina smiled instantly upon seeing her. Children were intuitive. They sensed goodness long before adults admitted it. Avina tugged Riven's sleeve, whispering that Lara looked like an angel who forgot her wings at home. Their connection deepened slowly, built on small moments, sharing lunch at the park with Avina, discussing the pressure of responsibility in the warm daylight, laughing quietly at the child chasing pigeons across the grass. Lyra never acted above them, never hid behind her title. She blended into their world with surprising ease, and Riven found himself opening up in ways he never had since Mariel passed. But just when everything began to feel possible, the world reminded Riven of who he believed he was. Rumors began spreading among workers that Riven was only getting attention because Lyra petted him. Others whispered that he was trying to use her for money. Riven heard every comment, every mocking laugh, and each one chipped away at the fragile confidence he had started to rebuild. Old wounds reopened, wounds of being judged for not providing enough, for not becoming the man he wanted to be, for losing everything once already. He began pulling away. He avoided Lyra, made excuses at the site, and left quickly whenever she arrived. When she called, he let the phone ring. When she approached him at the park, he claimed he was busy. Lyra noticed the change instantly. People like her had been abandoned. Before, she recognized distance the way sailors recognized storms. One bright afternoon, after nearly a week of silence from him, Lyra found Riven sitting alone on a bench near the community center where they first danced. The daylight shimmered across the quiet street, and the air smelled faintly of blooming jasmine. She approached slowly, understanding that something had broken inside him again. Riven didn't look at her when she sat beside him. He stared at his hands, ashamed of the calluses, the memories, the brokenness he felt he carried like an aura. He told her that their worlds were different, that he didn't deserve her kindness, that he couldn't risk failing someone again. And Lyra listened, really listened the way no one ever had. Then something unexpected happened. She stood up, extended her hand exactly as she had weeks earlier, and said something that made the sunlight feel warmer, the breeze gentler, the world pause around them. She told him that healing wasn't betrayal, that second chances weren't gifts but choices, and that regret grows wherever courage is abandoned. And then she said the same words that changed everything the first time: dance with me before you regret it. This time, when she said it, her voice trembled, not from fear but from hope. Riven looked at her hand, then at her eyes, and something inside him shifted. Maybe life hadn't taken everything from him. Maybe some things were still waiting to begin. He took her hand, and under the broad daylight, with cars passing nearby and people walking past, they danced again, not perfectly, not gracefully, but honestly. Avina ran toward them, laughing as she wrapped her arms around both of them, making the moment complete. For the first time in years, Riven felt like the world wasn't slipping away from him. Instead, it felt like it was slowly coming back. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. Your support helps us continue creating stories that bring hope. Special request: comment your favorite moment from the story. Your words help this channel grow.